Well, good day. I'm Gary Romine. Been here in Prineville for a lot of years. My family resided in Clarkston, Washington. I was born in Lewiston, Idaho, and we lived in Clarkston, Washington, just across the Snake River. But so my early growing up days were there in Clarkston with lots of family around, and I had a grandfather that founded a department store there in Clarkston in 1916, so I used to kind of follow him around the store. And my dad was involved in a department store in Lewiston most of his early life. But we made a change. Dad wasn't particularly happy with his job, and he learned of a position opened in Salem. And so, long story short, he applied for that job and was hired, and we made the move from Clarkston to Salem in I believe 1941. That was a pretty ambitious move as far as I was concerned, because I had lots of friends in Clarkston, and starting up in the 5th grade in a strange school was kind of challenging. But I did grow to enjoy Salem. It was an interesting town, and that was during the war years, so lots of interesting things went on in Salem through that period. Once again, Dad was involved in a department store there in Salem, and of course gas was rationed, so we didn't have a lot of gas, and he walked to work every day, 16 blocks I think from our home to the store, and he'd do that morning and night, so that was a pretty big endeavor on his part. But just a couple of thoughts through that period. The war years, many things were rationed, and many things difficult to get. But I can remember that once in a while they would get ladies' nylon hose available in a big shipment, and boy, the word would spread to women lickety-split, and they would line up throughout the store and out onto the sidewalk to get one or two pair of nylons. I don't remember how many they were allotted, but that was always kind of interesting how that all developed. But I did enjoy my school years in Salem, but lo and behold, in I think it was 1946, the department store that Dad was in was acquired by a chain in Portland, and so they moved in, and that took care of his position. So he was on the lookout for another job, and he learned of a position in Prineville operated by the Ericson family. So at that time, the Ericsons were expanding their supermarkets throughout the Willamette Valley, so Dad was able to meet with Art Ericson in Salem and apply for the job, and then they made a trip to Prineville, and Dad liked what the position held, and so he was hired to come to Prineville and operate the department store for the Ericson. So that was 1947 when he made the move here to the store, and it was I think early in the year, January or February, so my mother and I stayed in Salem so I could finish out the school year, and made our move in June. But that's how we got to Prineville, and once again, having to pull up roots was difficult. I had so many friends in Salem, and just desired to go back, but finally my folks said, well, we'll just help you pack your bag and you can go on back. And I decided then I liked Prineville. And so luckily got involved with an old family friend that my folks knew in Clarkston, and they happened to be here, and this gentleman kind of befriended me, and got to do a lot of fishing with him and hunting, and he was learning to fly via the GI Bill, and so once he got his license he took me flying, and so I had lots of air flights over Prineville. It was very, very interesting. Looking at Prineville, growing up there, I was a sophomore when we came, and so every morning Dad and I'd walk to work, and I'd sweep the store out before I went to school, and we lived on the west end of town on 3rd Street, actually where Out West Insurance is located today. But I remember that walk every morning. There was a sidewalk maybe less than a block or so, and then it was just kind of a path along 3rd Street and down where First Interstate is today. That was kind of a mill race and full of cocktails and a little soft ground. Remember, no sidewalk there, but we got down, I guess, about Deer Street or just before that, where the sidewalks were completed at that time, and it was smooth going. But I'd finish sweeping the store out and head off to school, and actually I came to enjoy Prineville and made a lot of friends, and pretty shy. Finally got pretty involved my junior and senior year in high school, and I liked to play football, and I remember my junior year, I think we had gotten a new coach, and we didn't do very well. I think we won one game that year and lost all the rest, and needless to say, the administration made a change in the football coach, and we had a new coach my senior year, and by gosh, we turned things around and only lost one game and won 8 straight. And so we had a pretty good team, and that was kind of the start of Crook County dominating the A2 football classification, and the teams went on to win 2 state titles, I think, after I had graduated. But so that quickly is, in a nutshell, through my school years. From there I went to Oregon State and spent 4 years at Oregon State, and very enjoyable years. Had great time, made many, many friends, lifelong friends, in fact. And I guess I might back up a little bit. In high school, I guess my junior year, one of my good friends had a date, and he said, well, let's double date Friday night. And gosh, I didn't know any girls, and actually I'd never dated, and I was kind of at a loss, but we had a high school gal that worked for us in the store, and so I knew her, and that was my date. But ironically, my friend's date was Ramona Moore, and we had a couple or 3 double dates, and then Doug, my friend, decided to move on, and so I asked him, I said, well, are you going to date Ramona anymore? And he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, okay, is it all right if I do? And he said, sure. So that's how I became acquainted with Ramona Moore, who has been my wife now. Well, this is 2023. We were married in 1954, so lot of years. But I guess backing up again to college days, when she graduated in '52, she decided to follow me to Oregon State and came down and got involved. And of course, our intent at that time was maybe to get married after I graduated, and so she tailored her 2 years kind of to home ec, and went pretty strong in her education towards sewing and cooking. But once again, we made some wonderful friends there at Oregon State, and again, lifetime friends. So I graduated in 1954 from Oregon State and did receive a ROTC commission as a second lieutenant at the same time. So at that time the Korean War was going on, but I guess a week after I graduated, Ramona and I were married, and that was the start of a lifelong association that's been wonderful. I guess just jumping forward on our life period, we had our honeymoon, and once we got back, well, took off to Pendleton, where my uncle had a wheat ranch, and so I had spent my summers working there previously to being married. And so anyway, we ended up on the wheat ranch, and Ramona cooked for the harvest crew, and I completed my work in the wheat fields. But while we were there, I got my orders to report active duty in January of '55. So I guess we finished the ranch work, came back to Prineville, and I worked in the store some until I had to leave for my active duty tour, which was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And I guess through that period in the service, again, enjoyable years, Fort Sill, Fort Ord, California, and Fort Polk, Louisiana, and some interesting duties through those years. But through that period, I kind of looked at my life and decided that I would like to get involved in the department store back home. So we kind of geared things accordingly, and when I got out of the Army, out of the Army in '57, came back to Prineville and started working in the store, and Ramona helped out too, and were involved at that time. We had our first son while we were still stationed at Fort Ord, so I guess you could say he was a Army brat. That's the way they referred to him at that time, but his birth certificate, place of birth, Fort Ord, California. So anyway, we got involved in the store, and spent a lot of years in the operation. I guess just trying to put that all together here and telling this story on how it follows along, but quickly, Dad was manager during those early years. I was involved in the store, and finally he decided to retire, and I took over as manager in the mid-'60s, as I recall, and then Ramona and I purchased the store in 1972. Okay, just a little background and throw in the history of Ericson's department store and how it came about. And actually, the founder of the store was Edgar Stewart, and he had a general store in Sumter, and this was during the years of the gold rush in that area, and where they did lots of dredging and what have you. But he had his general store in the late 1800s. Sumter was about 2,500 people, but in some of the correspondence that I have from him, he indicates when it's time to get out of business, when the people started leaving, and the gold operation was dwindling, and so Edgar decided it's time to get out, and he sold his grocery inventory to a couple of stores there in Sumter, and he loaded up all of his clothing and domestics and what have you in wagons, and came to Prineville in 1903. And ironically, he set up operations on 3rd Street, where the present building is now, between Edward Jones and the Masonic Lodge. That was the store area. But he took on a partner that actually was the father of Art Michel, an old-time merchant here in Prineville, but his dad was partner with Edgar Stewart for a couple of years. Then Edgar bought him out in 1905 and formed Edgar Stewart department store. And so he operated there on that location on 3rd Street for a number of years, and then a new building was built around the corner on Main Street, where the menswear is today, and that was a new building in 1923, and Edgar Stewart moved his operation into that building and operating groceries as well as the dry goods. And then in 1938, the Ericsons were expanding, and so they bought the grocery end of Stewart's operation. And so at that time, here was the grocery store and the department store operating in the building where the menswear is today. So if you can visualize that, it's a fairly small area that had 2 stores. So Art Ericson kind of promoted Stewart to build a new building around on 3rd, where he had started business years ago. So that's how the present building there now that the exercise place is occupying. But the grocery store was on the west side of that building, and the department store on the east side. So Edgar continued to operate the department store, but then in I believe it was 1944 that the Ericsons bought out Stewart's department store and started operating that. So, and we came on board. Dad got that position to manage the department store in 1947. That's how we arrived in Prineville. And going fast forward, of course, I'd worked in this store off and on while I was going to school, and as did Ramona as well. But so once I got out of the military, started in the department store, and we worked that. And then maybe I mentioned earlier that in 1972 that Ramona and I bought the store from the Ericsons, and we continued to operate that as a family store. And actually we carried men's, women's, children's, domestics, so we were, I guess you could say, a general store, and a family type store for babies through adults. As I guess through the years operating the store, I reached my plateau in life where I thought, well, maybe it's time to move on. And both Ramona and I had good health, and we'd worked hard for a lot of years, so we kind of looked for buyers and none surfaced, so we bit the bullet in 1994 and closed our store. And it was a very, very difficult decision for us to part with something that we'd been involved in most of our lives, and then we were concerned about our health because we had a staff of about 9 or 10 folks, and just how their life might be affected, and we were concerned about the community not having a store of our kind available. But anyway, we did make our decision and closed the store out and moved on with our lives. We're very thankful today that we made the decision when we did. We had a good closeout, and that worked well. And I guess the only sad part about it, that nothing has really replaced the type of operation that we had, and to this day there's still voids that where people can't buy things that we used to stock every day. I'm just thinking about some things that I got involved with over the years that played a very important part in Prineville, and one that comes to mind is Ocho Telecasters. And of course, looking back, in the early days, this would be in the 50s, when television was becoming prominent in our country, and some local people felt that we also needed TV, so they formulated what was known as Ocho Telecasters, and they were very far-sighted. They got organized, they sold some stock to create money to buy the necessary equipment, and long story short, once again, the translators were placed up on top of Grizzly Mountain, and the receiving antennas also there on Grizzly. And believe it or not, they asked people for $1 a month for TV, $12 a year. What a deal. And would you believe, even with that very nominal fee, we faced freeloaders that put up an antenna and received our signal and didn't participate. But it was very interesting. I got involved probably in the early 60s with the Telecasters and stayed actually active until it dissolved in later years. But very, very interesting. Reception was so-so, but we had a pretty good signal. We worked a deal out with the folks out at I'm lost Hampton Butte. There we go. So we shot a signal to those folks out there. They had a receiver on Hampton Butte, as I recall. Another sidelight when the end of the Seventh Mountain came on board. Well, they didn't have TV, and they approached us to see if we would shoot them a signal. So ended up that we did some adjustment and sent TV signals to the end of the Seventh Mountain when they were in their early days. And another sidelight, Redmond had their TV signal on top of Gray Butte, but their signal wasn't very good, so they approached us, and we finally made a deal as they would give us all our equipment and we would beam them a signal. So once again we removed all the equipment from Grey Butte, and we were able to add another channel to our system and proceeded. So the telecasters did a pretty good job, but then kind of their changes came about in TV reception and all, and people started going to more updated TVs. So finally we did dissolve the telecasters, and the money that we had accumulated and got from our equipment was donated. So that's kind of the early story of TV in Prineville as I remember it, and I don't know whether there's anybody around today that was involved with it. So anyway, I might be the last guy around that knew some of that story. One other quick things that I'd like to mention, that's Prineville Economic Promotions, commonly known as PEP. And once again, some forward-thinking business people in Prineville thought about formulating PEP and sell stock and raise money that would be seed money to new businesses that might want to come to Prineville. And so that was the whole gist behind it, and stock was sold for $100 and kind of got a nest egg. And once again, PEP operated for a lot of years. We didn't have any real big endeavors, but one was a pretty good money maker for us, and we made some money on that, and it was a business that was active for a few years. Unfortunately didn't survive, but anyway, it was part of the community and did employ a few people, and PEP did create some funds, and we dissolved that in early 2000, as I recall, and the money that we had was sitting there, and there was 3 of us that were advisors of the PEP funds, and so we ended up donating that money to the fairgrounds to enable them to create an addition to one of the buildings there at the fairgrounds, Grizzly Mountain Pavilion. And actually that remodel was just completed a few weeks ago, and the PEP money was kind of seed money to help that project along. Thank goodness the fairgrounds had some additional funds that they threw in the pot that enabled the project to be completed. So I look for interesting things to happen with that addition, but again it shows some of the forward-thinking people back in the 50s and 60s have made an impact in this present day. So one other item I might touch on, Ramona roots go back actually 4 generations. She was a Moore, and their family homesteaded out in the Grizzly area, and her mother was a Breese, and the Breeses had ranch operation. The early days it was sheep bands that they ran, and then eventually they switched to cattle. But the ranch main house sits on the highway to Ochoco Dam. It's on the right side of the road, kind of a figure point, but the ranch itself extended up Combs Flat and about 12 miles or so, and the original house homestead was in what they called Gravy Gulch. It was off of Combs Flat Road, but the little house was occupied by Ramona's great-grandfather in 1888, and I don't know how many kids there were, but it was not very large, and the house was built with square nails, which was very, very interesting. We did take family trip up there several years ago. It was still standing, but unfortunately the weather took over here a couple of 3 years ago, and the building went down. But anyway, that was kind of the start of the Breese operation. Her grandfather continued on with the ranch, and then it's gone on down through the family, and there's still family involvement in that. A sidelight, her grandmother came here in the early 1900s to teach school, and the schoolhouse was again out Combs Flat. There was a mill site on the right side of the highway out there about 12, 13 miles, and this schoolhouse sat on skids, I guess you might say, near the mill site, and her grandmother taught there. And the building was moved several times. In fact, today it's still standing on the right side of the road as you go out Combs Flat. Again, long story short, her mother, Ramona's mother, taught in the same building. Her grandfather went to school in that schoolhouse. So a lot of interesting history there on that building. It's kind of sad to see it weather, and I'm sure it's going to go down one of these days. But Ramona pretty much grew up with the ranch life. Her parents were involved in small way in ranching, but Ramona spent many times with her grandmother in the homestead house up on Combs Flat, and with her aunt in some of the other houses on the ranch. So let's say her roots are deep, and with that I might just bring this to conclusion that I'm, I guess, a newcomer. I've only been here 75 years, but I've seen lots of changes. It's been a great place to live. I had a great family, and it was just great to watch Prineville grow, and it's a wonderful community and prospering, in good shape. I think we have good leadership, and it's going to continue to be a good place to live and plant your roots. And I guess my dad used to say, you wear out a pair of shoes in Prineville and you'll never leave. So with that, I guess I'll bring this to a conclusion, and hope I haven't bored you too much. So long.